Hello, dear colleagues. My name is Alexey Alexeyev. I'm an adjunct professor at the Department of Classics and Religious Studies, University of Ottawa. Welcome to my presentation. Garlanded altars writhing serpents. A Theography of Sacrifice and Worship on Roman Coinage. This presentation consists of three main parts. I will start with an introduction to the iconographic theme of animal and altar on Roman coinage. Specifically, I will focus on sacrificial animals and on animals as emblems of associated deities. The main part is dedicated to serpent imagery in the numismatic iconographic context of altar-centered ritual sacrifice and worship. And in the final part, I will examine the iconographic motif of serpent feeding above an altar, which provides fascinating examples of parallelism between Roman numismatics and early Christian art. On Roman coinage, animals were often depicted in the context of ritual sacrifice. Intended as sacrificial victims, they were pictured being led to, standing nearby, held above, or placed directly on altars, usually garlanded and lighted. The earliest example of such iconography is the sacrifice of a goat on a silver denarius minted in Rome in 97 BCE. Despite its early appearance, goat sacrifice was not a very popular subject on later Roman coinage. The succeeding numismatic instance does not even come from Rome, but from 2nd century CE Kushan, India. It features King Kanishka the Great beside an altar on the obverse, and god Shiva libating and holding a sacrificial goat by its horns on the reverse. Similar iconography, featuring Pan leading a goat to a lighted altar, appears on the provincial coinages of the Antonines and Severans. This marble relief depicts the preparation for a goat sacrifice. And this artwork features the classic trio of sacrificial animals: pig, ram, and bull. Goat and ram appear together exclusively on the coinages of Domitian. Silvanus and Mercury are deities most strongly associated with the ram sacrifice. The earliest depictions of pig sacrifice appear on the coinages of Augustus. The emperor was often pictured officiating at the pig sacrifice. The bull was by far the most popular subject of Greco-Roman numismatic sacrificial iconography. This late classical coin bears images of a kneeling bull and lighted altar. The bucranium was regularly depicted as an element of altar decor. On this denarius serratus, the bucranium is featured on the obverse, just above Diana's head, while the preparation for the bull sacrifice is on the reverse. The bull was frequently depicted standing beside an altar or led to it by a victimarius. Sometimes the bull appeared standing facing an altar, surrounded by a large crowd of cheering onlookers, and with a temple as a backdrop, suggesting a major ceremonial event. On the Sesterti of Caligula, a bull is shown placed atop an altar with a splendidly decorated temple facade in background. Roman coins provide many details of the bull sacrifice, for example, the participation of flute players. Another interesting detail, important in the context of this panel, is the functional interchangeability of the altar and ritual tripod. Coins of Domitian were the first to depict the actual bull slaughter, with the victimarius raising an axe immediately before the mortal blow. This iconographic tradition survived well into the 3rd century. This splendid medallion commemorating Commodus' nascent imperatorship follows Domitian's general iconographic scheme, but once again the tripod substitutes for an altar. Coinages of various emperors followed this alternative iconographic convention. These coins demonstrate the final stage of the bull sacrifice, when the animal parts, here only the heads, placed neatly beside each other are shown, were consumed by a blazing fire atop a monumental altar. Now let's turn our attention to the animals as emblems of deities in the numismatic context of the altar-centered ritual. The eagle of Zeus, or Jupiter, is the uncontested leader. This late classical coin featured Zeus's head on the obverse and an eagle atop an altar on the reverse. Many Roman coin types contained images of the king of the gods together with his eagle and an altar. This superb tetradrachm of Vespasian pictures a magnificent eagle atop an elaborately decorated altar holding a winged caduceus in its beak. A glorious eagle atop a garlanded altar is a common feature on many Roman coins. Sometimes the eagle appeared much larger than the altar, and sometimes it was pictured flanked by 2 signa or vexilla. The Divus Constantius series of Maxentius featured an eagle perching atop a monumental altar. The remarkable detail of this altar's design is its prominent zoomorphic door pulls. Constantine the Great enriched the eagle and the altar iconography by introducing a pair of eagles, perhaps a reflection of the early dominate's dual rulership political arrangement. In the Constantinian version of the Divus Constantius series, 2 eagles flank a garlanded and lighted altar. This coin type is interesting for the different renderings of the altar flames, from somewhat realistic to highly stylized. The eagle often appeared as an auspicious sign, indicating divine approval of the altar-centered ritual activities. In this case, the flying eagle carries a bull's head above a ritual scene involving Alexander the Great and the cult image of Apollo Smintheus. Once again, the altar and tripod are used in the same composition interchangeably. On Roman coinage, the eagle is one of only 3 animals whose images appear on altars. The Divus Galerius series of Maximinus Daia displays an eagle as part of the altar's decorative program. This coin type is also interesting for its variety of stylistic approaches to the flames rendering. The next most popular animal after the eagle was the owl of Athena, or Minerva. It was pictured routinely atop an altar and usually in a combination with other emblematic devices: the olive branch, or helmet, spear, shield, and gorgonion. This iconographic convention was introduced by Emperor Nero. Much later, it was reintroduced creatively by Constantine the Great on the gold solidi and on the bronze quarter-follis. Minerva and the owl appear together on many Roman coin types. Here as a cult image inside an elegant shrine. Emperor Domitian is pictured libating over a garlanded and lighted altar. The owl often accompanies Athena during altar-centered ritual activities. On this late classical coin, two major deities appear together with their animal emblems. Athena with an owl and Apollo with a raven. Laureate Apollo with the face of Domitian and a raven with a laurel branch demonstrate the emblematic function of this animal-plant pairing. Apollo and raven are often pictured together during altar-centered rituals. Among other avian emblems, I will mention the Stork of Pietas, the peacock of Juno, the ibis of Hermes-Thoth, the dove of Tyche-Astarte, and the rooster of Selinos. One of the most prominent mammal emblems is the stag of Artemis, or Diana. It was pictured standing unaccompanied beside a lighted altar on the coins of Ephesus. Ephesian coinages of the Augustan era featured the garlanded altars decorated with the relief images of two deer, likely a visual reference to the cult of Artemis Ephesia. Other deity-animal pairings including the hind of Pietas, the hound of Artemis and Hecate, the panther of Dionysus, and the lions of Cybele. The dolphin accompanied Poseidon or Neptune and Aphrodite. In Roman numismatic material, aphiographic expressions, in other words, those containing artistic depictions of serpents, occupy an exceptionally prominent place. In particular, serpents are extensively represented in the iconographic context of altar-centered bloodless ritual sacrifice and worship. On the obverse of this coin, minted in Asia Minor, perhaps at the sanctuary of Zeus Epicarpius, a swirling serpent is pictured atop an altar, while the reverse bears the image of a lighted altar. These silver denarii of Yuba of Mauritania, depicting a rearing cobra, are the earliest instances of the serpent atop an altar numismatic typology. This subject was especially popular on the provincial issues of the Antonines and Severans. This spectacular bronze of Caracalla is perhaps the most impressive example of the typology. Alternatively, the serpent was sometimes depicted entwining an altar. This cylindrical altar from Cnidos is decorated with the relief image of an entwining serpent. Sometimes the serpent was pictured atop an altar coiled around a semi-globular object. And in one extreme case, the undulating serpent seems to levitate above an altar. On some coin types, the serpent was depicted approaching an altar or inspecting the ritual offering's contents. Coinages of Valerian and Gallienus featured a serpent rearing beside or entwining a cylindrical lighted altar in the middle of the sacred precinct, surrounded by three temples. Sometimes the serpent was depicted swirling atop an altar positioned inside a shrine. Some coin types featured double altars, such as in the case of the Dioscuri, or a pair of serpents reaching for a ritual offering, usually a large egg-shaped object. Sometimes two rearing serpents atop altars were pictured flanking a sacrificial bull or sacred tree, or holding a ceremonial wreath aloft. Serpent-entwined flaming torches were especially popular among the Cyzicus coin engravers. Often, torches were decorated with barley ears and poppy seed pods, a clear visual reference to the mystery cult of Demeter and Persephone. Two serpent-entwined torches were frequently pictured flanking a small lighted altar. Barley ears and poppy seed pods were often included in this type's design scheme. Sometimes cista mystica, with serpent emerging from it, substituted for an altar. Some coin types featured a larger altar, sometimes surmounted by a ritual vessel. In some cases, the serpent-entwined torches flanked monumental ritual structures, with the torch-bearing figures atop them. Now let's look at the numerous associations between altars, serpents, and particular deities, and how they were reflected in the numismatic material. One of the earliest examples of such relations is the Roman Republican issues featuring a Janiform on the obverse and the serpent-surmounted altar inside the shrine on the reverse. This coin type pictures a cylindrical garlanded altar with a serpent on top, positioned between the two faces of Janus. This similar in design cylindrical altar originates from Hellenistic Pergamon. It bears the relief emblems of three deities: the caduceus of Hermes, the serpent-entwined rod of Asclepius, and the eagle-surmounted thunderbolt of Zeus. On Roman coinage, serpents were often pictured accompanying their patron deities, performing a ritual libation of wine or deposition of grain or fruits at stationary or portable altars. Athena or Minerva and her emblematic serpent were frequently depicted in such a manner. This remarkable Sestertius of Geta shows Minerva and Victory sacrificing over a cylindrical altar surmounted by a rearing serpent. Sometimes the serpent was pictured entwining Athena's spear. In some cases, Athena performed ritual libations in a seated position. This rare Pamphilian stater displays Athena Parthenos with her serpent on the obverse and Apollo libating over a lighted altar on the reverse. The vast majority of ritual scenes involving Apollo feature his emblematic serpent-entwined tripod. These classical coins from Selinos picture the river god Hypsas libating from a fiale over an elegant altar entwined by a bearded serpent. On Roman coins, the god of medicine Asclepius or Aesculapius was always depicted together with his emblematic serpent. He was also often accompanied by his daughter Hygeia, the goddess of health. The type of Asclepius leaning against a serpent-entwined rod while libating over an altar was produced exclusively in the Mint of Alexandria. A variation of this type pictured a serpent undulating at the tip of the rod. Sometimes Asclepius was depicted seated while performing a libation over a serpent-entwined altar. On the splendid Aureus of Caracalla, the emperor is pictured libating over a garlanded and lighted altar in front of the cult image of Aesculapius. And on this bronze of Valerian, the emperor appears as Asclepius himself, holding the emblematic serpent and twine rod and libating over an altar. Dionysus, or Bacchus, was depicted libating from his emblematic cantharos. Victory was pictured carrying her wreath and palm frond, while standing beside a serpent and twine altar, or atop a Sister Mystica serving as an altar-like pedestal. Other coin types include Pax, holding a caduceus with the Sister Mystica surmounted by a rearing serpent behind her, Castor and Pollux, with a serpent and twine sister or small altar between them, and Genius, holding a cornucopia and libating over a slender serpent and twine altar. The goddess of safety, salvation, welfare, and health Salus, depicted libating from a patera over a serpent and twine altar, was a very popular subject on Roman imperial coinage, both in bronze and in gold. On the sestertii of Hadrian, Salus was pictured in an unusual attitude, facing right, holding patera in her left hand, and with her right offering a piece of solid nourishment to a rearing serpent. The denarii of Pesenius Niger depicts Salus standing beside a lighted altar while holding an undulating serpent in her right hand and a ritual offering in her left. This rare medallion of Antoninus Pius features a female personage feeding a tree-entwining serpent over a garlanded altar with the inscription Salus. And this medallion of Marcus Aurelius depicts a similar ritual scene with the female personage feeding a serpent and twining a female statuette. We know from the archaeological evidence that in ancient Rome some deities or priests of their cults were pictured as serpent entwined. This gilded bronze serpent entwined figurine was found sealed in a burial pit inside an altar at the sanctuary of Janiculum in Rome, together with the ritual offerings of eggs, seeds, and flowers. And this marble statue of Osiris Chronocrator depicts the deity serpent entwined. Like Athena and Asclepius, Salus was also pictured performing ritual libations in a seated position, on the bronze, as well as on the gold coins. Coins of Macrinus provided an unusual iconographic treatment, wherein seated Salus gently guides serpent with her right hand in the direction of patera. A similar approach is demonstrated on this spectacular medallion of Severus Alexander. However, this time the emperor joins Salus in the libation ritual. This coin from Nicomedia presents the legend of the city's foundation, involving King Nicomedes I, a shepherd, an auspicious eagle, and the serpent rearing beside an altar. In Greco-Roman numismatic iconography, the tripod was always very strongly associated with the serpent. Serpents were routinely pictured swirling beside the tripod, entwining one of its legs, or enveloping it with sinuous coils. In later tradition, the serpent-entwined tripod was depicted containing ritual objects, an agonistic crown, selection of fruits, or laurel branch. Apollo is the deity most closely associated with the tripod. The epic confrontation with Python at Delphi is the main source of this association. Apollo was often pictured libating or performing other ritual activities near or above a tripod. The famous seer Amphilochus was depicted in a manner similar to Apollo, sprinkling a sacrificial pig with an aspergillum beside a large serpent and wine tripod. Amphalos is another sacred object strongly associated with the serpent. Apollo's strong association with Delphi explains the appearance of serpent and wine Amphalos together with the emblematic Kithara. In the scenes of Apollo sacrificing, the ritual role of the serpent and wine Amphalos is similar to those of the altar and tripod. On this magnificent medallion of Philip the Arab, Apollo is pictured standing beside the serpent and wine Amphalos and flanked by his son Asclepius, leaning against his serpent and wine rod, and granddaughter Hygeia, feeding a serpent from a patera. Sister Mystica is another ritual object that performs ceremonial functions similar to those of the altar, tripod, and Amphalos. This funeral altar from Rome bears relief images of a serpent and wine Sister Mystica on its sides. On Roman provincial coinage, the serpent and wine Sister Mystica occupies a significant place. On many types, the serpent was depicted emerging from the Sister Mystica. Demeter or Ceres is the deity most closely associated with the Sister Mystica. Demeter was pictured holding her emblematic torches over a lighted altar, or with a tall serpent and wine torch, sacrificing above a Sister Mystica with the serpent emerging from it. Sometimes the sister was substituted by a ritual modius, a measuring bucket filled with barley ears and poppy seed pods. On coins of Alexandria, Demeter was pictured depositing grain ears into a kalaphos, a ritual basket supported by two rearing serpents. The kalaphos was often pictured containing a serpent or flanked by two rearing serpents. The iconographic motif of serpent feeding above an altar was well represented in Roman numismatic material, as we can see from these coins featuring Salus. This subject finds its fascinating parallel in early Christian art, particularly in the visual narrative of Daniel and the Dragon of Babylon, illustrating the deuterocanonical Bel and the Dragon 23:27. In the story, Daniel kills the dragon by feeding it cakes made of pitch, fat, and hair. On this sarcophagus with biblical scenes from the Vatican necropolis, Daniel is shown presenting the three entwining serpent with the deadly nourishment above a lighted altar. On this sarcophagus from the Basilica di San Lorenzo, Daniel is feeding a serpent rearing atop a small cylindrical altar. And here the serpent feeding scene is accentuated by the overturned lighted altar. The adjacent depiction of Adam, Eve, the tree, and the serpent in the Garden of Eden suggests the theological connection between these two iconographic narratives related to the theme of faithful consumption. The animal and altar theme is extensively represented on Roman coinage, from the depictions of sacrificial animals to animals as emblems of associated deities, acting in altar-centered ritual settings. All instances of serpent and altar iconographic expressions were assigned to one of the 7 typological categories. The functional ritual parallelism between the altar, tripod, amphalos, Systemystica, and Calathos was demonstrated. The iconographic parallelism between Roman numismatics and early Christian art was demonstrated through examples of the serpent-feeding Salus and Daniel. Thank you.